Good morning. Today is I'm losing track of the days. Um, Thursday, March 26, 2020. The time is now 8:49 a.m. Central Standard Time. I am in Matson, Illinois, and I wanted to share something. Uh, this is actually a text thread that I'm sending to my children who have phones. And I hope and I pray that they don't bypass it. And, it's kind of like, oh, here go mama on her thing again or whatever. There are a lot of information going on out there, a lot of things being spread about, the coronavirus, COVID-19. You got conspiracy theorists and just all kinds of stuff coming at people. But this thing is operating by a pattern. And the reason why it's operating by a pattern, what I mean by pattern is that this is not something that just came up out the blue or is man-made or it's this or it's that. This is going according to scripture. And when we understand this pattern and we understand scripture, then we can better prepare ourselves and our families, our individual households. And when we prepare ourselves and our households, that can keep us safe. That can keep us safe. If we don't, we can get caught up out here. So, I'm going to read what I've shared with my children thus far. There's puzzle pieces basically that you have to put together, and I hope that anybody that is listening to the sound of my voice will be able to follow. That's kind of like in the scriptures when it say, he who have ears, let him hear spiritually, have some understanding. And those who have eyes, spiritual eyes to see, their eyes are open, that they can really see what is going on. So I told my children, I am texting my children, or I have texted my children overnight. Yeah, I even fell asleep and then woke back up right on it. Please take this seriously. This is not a hoax, fear-mongering propaganda, or anything else that non-believers or conspiracy theorists want people to believe. This is the wrath of Yahweh and the end of this current world system as we know it. There will be many deaths, just how it happened when Yahweh ends a world due to wickedness across the earth. Only a remnant means a small number of families are saved, and it's only because we were obedient to what Yahweh said for them to do, which was always stay in the house until my wrath passes over you. Only go out for essential needs that you cannot order online and have delivered. Try to cook and eat at home as much as possible. Take your vitamins, herbs, etc. Wear a mask outside and gloves. Keep clean. This is not a time to get sick or die, because this is what I'm telling my children, because I wouldn't be able to do anything at all. I couldn't visit you. We can't have a funeral or memorial service because people cannot come together or nothing. I'm telling my son Meyer, because he's been out a lot, even though he just go over to one person's house, but still, stay at home. You do not know how other people are moving and may get the virus and pass it on to you. So this is Isaiah 26:20. Come, my people, enter into your chambers and shut the door behind you. Hide for a little while until Yahweh's wrath is past. Listen carefully. Yahweh is about to come out of his heavenly place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their wickedness, their sin, their injustice, their wrongdoing. The earth will reveal the innocent bloodshed upon her and will no longer cover her sin. This is another interpretation. My people, go into your rooms and shut the door behind you. Hide for a little while until his fury has ended. Yahweh is going to come out from his dwelling place to punish those who live on earth for their sins. The earth will uncover the bloodshed on it and will no longer cover up its dead bodies. Scriptural prophecy. Elohim said to Abraham, "You can know for sure that your descendants will live in a land that is not their own. They will be slaves, and they will be oppressed for 400 years. But I will punish the nation they serve, and after that will they come out with many possessions. But you will die in peace and be buried in a very old age. In the 4th generation your descendants will come back here, because the sins of the Amorites will not have run its course until then." Our ancestors indeed came here as slaves and stepped foot on American soil in 1619. So when you do the math on that, this is what the math is. That's 2019. That's 1619. That's 400 years. 400 years of African History Commission. This is on a government website. The commission's logo symbolizes 400 years of African American history. The drum stands for global communications and healing. Segmented change represent the breaking of the cycle of slavery and the perpetual struggle for equality. 2 stars depict balance between inspiration and aspiration. Let me scroll down here, because there's a lot. And so you see, this is nps.gov. On August 1619, 20 enslaved Africans were brought to Point Comfort in the English colony of Virginia. This site is now part of Fort Monroe National Monument. The 400 Years of African American History Commission Act, signed into law January 8th, 2018, established a 15-member commission to coordinate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in the English colonies. The commission's purpose is to plan, develop, and carry out programs and activities throughout the United States that recognize and highlight the resilience and cultural contributions of Africans and African Americans over 400 years, acknowledge the impact that slavery and laws that enforce racial discrimination had on the United States, encourage civic, patriotic, historical, educational, artistic, religious, and economic organizations to organize and take part in anniversary activities, assist states, localities, and nonprofit organizations to further the commemoration, and coordinate public scholarly research about the arrival of Africans and their contributions to the United States. The commission may also provide grants to communities and nonprofit organizations to develop programs, grants to research and scholarly organizations to research, publish, or distribute information about the arrival of Africans in the United States, and technical assistance to states, localities, and nonprofit organizations. Again, that is on the nps.gov website. Now, many people still didn't know about that. It wasn't announced. It wasn't promoted like everything else is promoted. No one pretty much knew. I knew, my sister knew, maybe a few other people knew, because I did know. And I do know, my family is a bunch of educators. And they have positions where they could have carried out or tapped into these resources in order to get those grants to do everything that pretty much this government site set up to do. Um, whether they did, whether they didn't, I mean, that was up to each organization that would do that, but it wasn't promoted. And it's not like people are really researching these things or know them in order for them to carry out those things. But it's almost like you have information, you don't want to give it out, but you feel like, okay, well, I'm gonna do my part to just put it out there, so I did my job, but it wasn't encouraged and promoted, so the job was half done. So here it says, as you can see, this is from a government website, nps.gov. By the end of 2019, Yahweh turned up the heat, and reports of the coronavirus, which means crown poison, surfaced. So here's the etymology. Corona, a crown, from Latin corona, a crown, a garland. In ancient Rome, especially a crown or garland bestowed for distinguished military service. To turn, bend. Virus, a venomous substance, from Latin poison, sap of plants, slimy liquid, a potential juice. To melt away, to flow, used of foul or malodorous fluids, with specialization in some languages to poisonous fluid. So then the definition of contagious or contagion. A contagious disease, the transmission of a disease by direct or indirect contact. A disease-producing agent, such as a virus, poison, contagious influence, quality or nature, corrupting influence or contact, rapid communication of an influence, such as a doctrine or emotional state, an influence that spreads rapidly. So who wears this contagious crown, spreading poisonous ideas across the world? So then we have here, many people talk about a pyramid scheme, right? This is the pyramid. You have capitalism, which is all about that dollar. It's all about money. At the top of that pyramid, there are the rulers. We rule you. That's the pharaoh, king, queens, royal court, right? We fool you. That's the ecclesiastical system, religious. We shoot you. That's military. We eat for you. That's we can look at that as the whether it's political arena, entertainment, all of that. It just seems like they always celebrating or whatever. We work for all, we feed all. So who's keeping this pyramid, or the base of it, holding it up? The people, the peasants, basically. And you see where this was copyrighted in 1911. This particular picture here. Egyptian system, same thing. Pharaoh at the top. That's the kings, the queens, the royal courts, government officials under that, nobles, priests. You got the soldiers, the scribes, the merchants, the craftsmen, the farmers, and slaves. So who wears the crown? Who wears the crown? So this would be likened unto Pharaoh, the kings and queens. Right under that, who wears the crown? The priests, the noblemen, things like that. Okay? But what we're seeing right now is this is their tower moment. This is the tower card in the tarot. Right now we have the planet Uranus moved into Taurus, and it was retrograde for a while. But when it went direct, it made a trine aspect to the stellium of planets that's in the sign of Capricorn right now. Taurus is about the earth, its produce and production, its money, its finance, its economics. Capricorn, authorities, titles, government, status, big corporations, businesses, all of those things. Real estate, or at least the money making part of. I mean, not the money making part, but the actual business of real estate, because the real estate itself is Taurus, but then you have the business aspect of it that would be Capricorn. And when that aspect was made, okay, it's Uranus and Taurus that trined that stellium in Capricorn. And then there was a sudden and shocking change in the earth, economic and worldwide government structures. So as a side note, the tarot, as a side note, the tarot cards is actually the Torah, or the Bible. Not the entire Bible, but the law and the prophets. In pictorial illustrations on cards. It originated with the Hebrews. However, other nations culturally appropriated their culture and spiritual system each time the Hebrew nation went into captivity to other nations that enslaved them. Right now, we're seeing the 10 plagues being poured out as it happened in the book of Exodus. And that is, you said 40? 1, the Nile River turns to blood. 2, frogs. 3, gnats. 4, flies. 5, death of livestock. 6, boils. 7, hail. 8, locusts. 9, darkness. 10th, plague, death of the firstborn. The principles remain the same. However, there's a different manifestation. As you can see, we are at the 10th plague with death through this spreading of the coronavirus. Now, this is how on time Yahweh is. The children of Israel marched out of Egypt between the month of March and April. That's the month that is called March, because they marched out of Egypt. The Easter holiday is really the Passover memorial of the death angel passing over the house of the Hebrews, not killing anyone in their house, because they had eaten the lamb and had the blood of the lamb on the inner doorposts of their houses. The same principle, but different manifestations, is when the Hebrews offered up Yahshua the Messiah to be killed for their sins. The next day, John, standing with 2 of his disciples, when John saw Yahshua walk by, John said, "Look, this is the Lamb of God." When the 2 disciples heard John say this, they followed Yahshua. The Passover. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month will be the very first month of the year for you. Tell the whole community of Israel, on the 10th day of this month, each man must take a lamb or a young goat for his family, 1 per household. A household may be too small to eat the whole animal. That household and the one next door can share 1 animal. Choose your animal based on the number of people and what each person can eat. Your animal must be 1-year-old male that has no defects. You may choose a lamb or young goat. Take care of it until the 14th day of this month." Now on March 9th, 2020, at 12:47 p.m. Central Standard Time, we had a full moon in Virgo, the Virgin. And it kind of represents the mother, the Virgin Mary or Miriam, Yahshua's mother. The full moon is a time of harvest, endings, reaping. Under Virgo domain is our daily routine, health and hygiene, and service work our service work environment. By March 10th through the 13th, the way we went about our daily routine, health and hygiene, and service work had ended and changed. We're being told to wash our hands, build up our immune system, etc., as not to contract the virus. That would represent the world card. You see the wreath around. You see here on the world card the eagle on the upper right hand corner. You see the lion on the upper, the bottom right hand corner, the ox on the bottom left hand corner, and the face of a man on the upper left hand corner. Hebrew is read from right to left, not left to right. So that's why you have the eagle, the lion on the right, and then the ox and the man on the left. The world card, and this is called the world card. So the world card, this is the Virgin centered and encircled in the wreath of health. Green symbolizes health and healing, with the fixed stability of Elohim within the cloud. So you see the cloud, the eagle in the cloud, the lions in the cloud. The cloud symbolizes Yahweh. Yahweh is not a cloud. He merely chose a cloud to symbolize himself because a cloud has no particular or descriptive shape and form. So with the fixed stability of Yahweh, because Yahweh says that I change not, therefore you sons of Jacob are not consumed. And the cloud shows the spirit of Yahweh on the four corners of the earth. You see those are four corners: north, east, west, and south. News. We are watching the news. It is imperative to watch world news right now, because with world news, there's not a lot of propaganda and fear mongering and things like that going on, misinformation, half information, or complete lies, just to keep the people from understanding what's really truly going on. We're watching the news, world news preferably, to know what's going on worldwide. So you have the E for eagle, and that represents the higher nature of Scorpio. The L for lion, Leo. The O for ox, Taurus. And the man, which is him, Aquarius, mankind or humanity. Elohim is Elohim. This woman in wreath, encircled in the wreath, and Elohim around her. And again, this is the world card. The world card is the last card in the tarot, and that's the end. And at the end of a cycle, you have the end of a cycle, and then a new cycle begins. I kind of got ahead of myself. So the world as we know it has ended, and now we start a new cycle. Unless considered an essential worker, people marched out of their jobs and schools and is now working from home, being educated from home. It's a new way. Many people have been doing this for a while. I'm a homeschooler. I was working from home. It was different, but that's what I was doing. And, a lot of people were not, it was like, that was, most people couldn't understand that concept. And so now everybody has been suddenly thrust into that concept. And those that Yahweh has already had positioned just by life circumstances, that's not something that for me, where it just came like, oh, I'm on the homeschool and work from home because Yahweh told me. Well, he did, but not like I didn't realize that it was something that was being set up in order to help people to be able to adjust more quickly. Okay, so the next thing that's in order, according to the scriptures, is martial law, or national guards being positioned. And this is for two reasons, among many. One, people are not following the state ordinance, which is to stay in place or stay at home and just only go out for the essentials. Stay away from large crowds. They're still doing that. And because of disobedience, it would have to be enforced. And your local police stations just doesn't have the resources and the manpower in order to do that. So they would most likely have to call in National Guard as backup. Two, when it's announced that paper money is no longer useful, because that's next, because money failed in Egypt, folks will lose their minds. It will cause a psychological problem. And, people, they're just going to lose their minds because they weren't aware of these things. It's not that that information hasn't been out there. That information has been out there for years, but many people just didn't believe it, or they never even heard of it. Well, when they do finally hear of it, there will be weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth, just like the scripture says. So the new moon in Aries is on March 24th, or was on March 24th. See, I lost track of days because it's the 26th. 2020 at 4 a.m. Central Standard Time. Under Aries domain is military, police and law enforcement, fightings, war, etc. My guess, this is just my guess, is that the National Guards will be positioned by or shortly after. By the Libra full moon, which is April 7th, 2020 at 9:35 p.m. We may see justice and or injustice enacted. There's more to this, but I ended right there at that point because I've sent my children a lot of information to take in. And there's a lot more. Which I will show according to the scriptures, and why I say this last part. Already I have heard from my mother is one, and my son. I heard from my son not too long ago that he saw a fleet of the National Guard trucks, a fleet of them out. And then yesterday I heard from my mother, and these are things that, people have said because what they saw with their own eyes. My son saw with his own eyes a fleet of the National Guard trucks. My mother yesterday with her own eyes said that she saw, those in uniform, National Guards, out and walking around on the low end in Chicago. We call it the low end, but now it's called Bronzeville. But on the low end in Chicago, she said she saw them walking around. I said they're getting positioned. And so if you figure that yesterday was the 25th and the new moon in Aries was the day before, which was yesterday was Wednesday, Tuesday the 24th at 4:28 a.m. Most people were probably still sleeping or something. Central Standard Time. Then new moon is about beginnings. It's it's planting. The farmers, they plant by the new moon. They plant at the new moon. So they're being planted now. They are being positioned now. By the full moon, we will most likely see the reality of that by April 7th. But like I said here, I have my eye on April 10th, where there's an actual manifestation of everybody seeing, military and justice or injustice either. But I more so say justice because, hey, if people are not staying in the house so that they won't contract it and spread it any further, just like in the scripture says that the law wasn't made for a righteous man, or the law wasn't made for those who are obedient. The law was made for the disobedient. So those who are disobedient, those who are not adhering to the law, those who are not following the law, that's what the law enforcement is for. It's not for injustice, although we have seen it. It is really for justice. You want the good cops, you want the good military, to root out the disobedient, to root out the evil. So the law is for the disobedient. Now, why do I say that that the law or the military is next in the setup? I'm gonna bring that up. Let's see, which was here. When Yahweh said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to go back and set up their camp facing," I think that's Pi. Let's see, can I? Well, no. Pi Haharoth, between Migdal and the sea. Set up your camp facing north by the sea. Pharaoh would think the Israelites are just wandering around. The desert is blocking their escape. I will make Pharaoh so stubborn that he will pursue them. Then, because of what I do to Pharaoh and his entire army, I will receive honor, and the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh. So that is what the Israelites did. When Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, was told that the people had fled, he and his officials changed their minds about them. They said, "What have we done? We've lost our slaves because we've let Israel go." Remember that pyramid. It can't stand. They cannot stand without the slaves at the bottom that holds this system up. Think about it. Everybody's not at work right now. Businesses are closed. And with that, the stock markets are tanking, and millionaires and billionaires are losing money. Okay, that's a financial collapse because they lost their slaves. They let them go. They had to. This virus is going around. But Yahweh is in control of all of this. Not some man-made thing. No, this is Yahweh. So Pharaoh prepared his chariot and took his armies with him. That's military. That's law enforcement. That's the whole, that's what that is. So that's the reason why I say next up is anything that has to do with military and law enforcement. He took 600 of his best chariots as well as all the other chariots in Egypt, placing an officer in each of them. Yahweh made Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, so stubborn that he pursued the Israelites who were boldly leaving Egypt. The Egyptians pursued the Israelites, Pharaoh's army, including all his horse-drawn chariots and cavalry, caught up with them as they were setting up their camp by the sea at Pi Hahareth, facing north. This would be, because remember where, hold on. Oh, it was right there. Remember what I said with this, that would be the chariot card. Because again, this is the Torah written in, or drawn in pictorial illustration on cards. And they did that because the children of Israel, or the Hebrew nation, went into slavery so much because of disobedience to Yahweh. And every time they went into slavery, the nation that overtook them would kill their children, kill them for trying to protect their children, burn up their libraries and their books and and everything, just the devastation. But they needed to have their history. The Torah is their history. They needed to have their history with them in order to teach their children their history. And so it was a discreet way to keep their history with them, to draw it out on cards and keep it with them, because it wasn't a whole book. They burned the books up. They stripped them of their history. So the Torah was a way to keep their history with them, very discreet. And every other nation that enslaved them knew that it was something intriguing about those cards, the mystery behind it, and they would culturally appropriate their spiritual systems, and anybody that does tarot or divination with the cards know that there's something there, and they talk about these meanings, but many don't really know or understand the true history behind those cards. And they were for divination for the Hebrew nation as their history that they carried. So this is the chariot card. And this is this particular part. That card depicts Pharaoh with his chariots and army, all right, going after the Hebrews as they left the chariot. That's the truth of the card. Okay? And after those 10 devastating plagues were poured out, the death, all of that, and now we are in Aries season, because Genesis, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna go here. Genesis, wait, you know what? Let's do this here. Now, this is what true astrology is, not horoscope. Elohim said, this is Genesis 1:14. Then Elohim said, let there be lights in the sky to separate the day from the night. They will be signs and will mark religious festivals, days, and years. They will be lights in the sky to shine on the earth. And so it was. Elohim made 2 bright lights, the larger light to rule the day, that's the sun, and the smaller light to rule the night, that's the moon. And he made the stars. Elohim put them in the sky to give light to the earth, to dominate the day and the night, and to separate light from the darkness. Elohim saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Now, we're going to read that from the King James Version as well. And Elohim said, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, that's the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night, that's the moon. He made the stars also. The stars form constellations in the heavens, and that star system, when you divide it up and you look at how those stars form, they form a sign of Aries, the ram. They form a sign of Taurus, the bull. They form a sign of Gemini. You'll see the twins. That's male and female. They form the crab, which is Cancer. The stars also form Leo, the lion. The stars form Virgo, the virgin. The stars also form Libra, which is the scales. They form Scorpio, which is the scorpion. Scorpion or eagle. They form Sagittarius, which is the archer. They form Capricorn, which is the goat. They form Aquarius, which is the water bearer, the man. They form Pisces, which is the fish. The stars form that. So when the sun moves into a sign, like say the sun is in Aries right now, we know that we are in a time, right? He said that there be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. That's time according to Yahweh. Yahweh is not bound by time. Yahweh is eternal. However, he made his own time clock, which goes by the sun and the moon's movement throughout the heavens, or those signs. The analog clock is made in that same way. You have 12 houses in the natal chart. You have 12 numbers on an analog clock. You have an hour hand, which would be which is like the sun, and then you have a minute hand, which is like the moon. The sun stays in a sign for 30 days. The moon stays in a sign for about two and a half days. So the moon is a faster moving body than the sun. The minute hand is a faster moving hand than the hour hand. And those numbers 1 through 12 would be likened unto the 12 constellations that's formed by stars, the houses. So that's how you know what time it is. And then the planets also move or transit through signs. Some of those planets stay for a couple of months. Some stay, for a year, like Jupiter stays in a sign for a year. Saturn stays in a sign for about 2.5 years. And then you have the generational planets, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, where Uranus stays in a sign for 7 years. Neptune stays in a sign for about approximately 14 years, and Pluto stays in a sign for approximately 21 years. So you see those cycles of 7. Uranus 7, Neptune 14, Pluto 21. Uranus is a cycle of 7. Neptune is a cycle of 2 sevens, 14. Pluto is a cycle of 3 sevens, 21. That's how Yahweh set up his timing. So that was the 4th day, and it said that it divide the light from darkness. Now, light and dark was in the beginning. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God, or the Spirit of Yahweh, moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day, and he called the darkness night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So science has taught us that we get the light from the sun. No. Light and darkness was here before the sun and the moon and the stars. Light and darkness was the first day. The sun, moon, and stars were the 4th day. These bodies just divide the light and the darkness.